The Mittel Rebbe has a sefer which is called Shar HaEmunah. Shar HaEmunah. I think it's 212 prakim. A maimer, it's one book. 212 prakim. If it's not 212 prakim, it's 212 pages, but it's 212 something. It's massive. One maimer from beginning, it just never stops. Goes on and on and on and on and on and on. Shar HaEmunah. What the Mittel Rebbe does in Shar HaEmunah is, he takes all the Morim of his father on Pesach, all of them, and puts them into one chant. And he mixes it up. Actually doesn't mix it up, he organizes it very nicely. The beans are over here, the barley is over here. Pardon me for having beans and barley on Pesach. And the meat is over here, and the kishke is over here, the kishke is for shor chametz, and the potatoes, everything is beautifully organized. I learned the Shar HaEmunah more than 25 years ago, a long time. I haven't seen it in a long, long time. And I learned it only once. I can't say I know it. I scribble on my paper, so when I learn, I talk to myself. And I was younger then. My brain was stronger, but my patience and my humility was less. So when the brain is strong, it works. The couple get out of it, I worked very, very hard, but I never rethought things. And when you don't think things over, you make mistakes, and then you get stuck in those mistakes, and then 50 pages later, nothing makes sense, because 50 pages before, you made a mistake, and you didn't let yourself see it correctly. It's an interesting thing, mamish. The Mittel takes all the Alter Rebbe, puts them into one maimer, but he puts them in order. Because Pesach has an order. Pesach has an order. And like it says in Ayem Yem, it says in the Minhagim, and we all know this, because this is one of the sichas that everybody learns, because it's connected to the Rebbetzin, whose birthday happens to be tomorrow. That the beginning of Pesach is Mitzrayim, and the end of Pesach is Mashiach, and it's a journey, it's a journey. So the Mittel Rebbe talks you through all the Yonim, Mamish, all the Morim Alter Rebbe that are printed in Likkutei Torah, all the good Maimorim, the classic Maimorim, and he puts them in order, one after the next. Now, when you put Maimorim one after the next, it doesn't fit so good sometimes. Sometimes we're about to repeat themselves. And the Mittel Rebbe, you have to have Halten Cup. It's not so easy to learn about the Mittel Rebbe. Even the Shar HaEmunah, which is of all Maimorim, the Mittel Rebbe, but it's not the hardest. Believe me, there's Maimorim much harder than the Shar HaEmunah that I learned from the Mittel Rebbe. But he talks you through the whole Pesach, from the beginning to the end. It's Mitzrayim, and Makas B'choires, and putting down on the door. You have a Chassidus, midnight, midday, Shvi Shal Pesach. He talks you through all the different steps of redemption. And later on in the Maimer, he goes on to speak about Mashiach, and Chavlei Mashiach, and the Ofer HaYolim. He talks you through all the sugyas of Geula, which are connected to Pesach. That's what the Mittel Rebbe does. Now, if a person has a lot of time, and a good head, and doesn't mind working hard, it's a project. I tell Bachrim, the Bachrim have vacation. The Bachrim have off from the middle of next week. Now, of course, they're all going to be busy day and night cleaning the homes for Pesach. They're going to be scrubbing floors and lining refrigerators, and maybe they're preparing to go away for Pesach to some place where don't get me started on what I think about boys going away from home for Pesach. That's another whole conversation. But I challenge the Bachrim, every mashpia does. When you have 10 days of vacation, and I don't want to say you have nothing to do, but you have almost nothing to do, if you'll give yourself a challenge, you'll get up in the morning and work hard, otherwise you're going to sleep all day, which is wonderful, but not very useful. So I tell the Chavre, the Fabrenget had with my Talmidim the other night, I said, you got to finish Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch Pesach is very long, it's heavy, it's a lot. Some parts are easier than others, and some of them are very unfamiliar. Like a whole bunch of simanim on baking matzah. Like a whole bunch of simanim making matzah. The average yeshiva bacher doesn't even know they're there, because you just learned a few simanim, tafay and beis, whatever it is. You learn the siman about Haseder, you learn about B'dikas Chametz maybe until it gets hard, and then you give up on that. The halachas of kashering you b'chlal skip, because the bachrim and yeshiva don't know anything about kashering until they learn yet a day, which is in 770, so they don't learn those halachas. But there's a whole bunch of simanim on how to make matzah. The halachas of Mayim Shalanu and Shmura and the whole business. So the most of the guys learn the simanim that deal with the Seder itself. Tafay and Beis, Tafay and Gimel, the end of Hilchas Pesach. But you're not learning this. You need to know all the halachas how to bake matzah. If you knew all the halachas how to bake matzah, you wouldn't eat matzah on Pesach from our matzah bakery or most matzah bakeries. So the Rosh Hashanah used to say, I don't go into the matzah bakery, so I went to the matzah bakery. I wouldn't be able to eat matzah on Pesach because halachas are very, very precise and very involved. And by the way, amongst the halachas of making matzah is, separating challah. Men separate challah in the matzah bakery. They don't do it every Shabbos. But because men are not used to doing it, they could forget to do it, and it's a very important mitzvah. It's a de'oraisa. If you don't separate challah, it's a challah from tevel. And tevel is misi b'dei shamayim. Tevel is not a small one, it's a big one. Anyway, so I challenge the Bachram to learn the whole Luchas Pesach. How many boys do it? One? That's also a lot. A boy learns Luchas Pesach. So first of all, the week before Pesach, he learned more than he learns the whole Zman in yeshiva. And second, his head is full. When you don't sleep, you don't waste your time. You use your mind. It's wonderful. I mean, it's hard to work hard, but it always feels good. It's wonderful to be lazy, and it always feels miserable. That's just the way the game is played. And we prefer the latter because I'm not miserable now. But it is when you take drugs and you feel bad, you just take a little more drugs. And you sleep a little more, you feel better. You feel miserable, so you sleep like a bissel. But a different challenge, I didn't say this to the Bachram this year, and I'm not necessarily saying it to you, but it would be an idea to take this Shara Amunah and from the vacation, till begin vacation, till you come back after Pesach. It's so much. But it gives you the narrative of Chassidus on Pesach from before the first Geula until the end of the last Geula, which is Mashiach. And he talks you through it step by step. I'm not going to say it's entirely in order because the way I see it is Pashat a Maimed after a Maimed after a Maimed. The Middle Rebbe strings together the Maimed and the Alter Rebbe into this narrative, and then he adds his notes. And the Middle Rebbe's notes are more than the original, so it's very expansive. Alter Rebbe has 3 lines, Middle Rebbe has a page, But that's what the Sha'ar Emun is. The Middle Rebbe wrote one essay, one Maimed, where he goes through all of the Chassidus on Pesach that the Alter Rebbe gave him, which is a lot of Maimedim. And he puts them in order and he explains them in this wonderful lattice work, this wonderful tapestry, this wonderful picture, But if I had learned it 2 or 3 times, I would enjoy it more than I only learned it once. The point of it all is, and this is what I want to talk about, at least initially, the point of it all is that the Pesach Seder revolves around a lot of mitzvahs, a lot of stuff, beginning with cleaning for Pesach. And then baking matzah. And then you have to kash your dishes, or you have to have separate dishes. I think it's a real chumrah to have a Pesach kitchen, because it's always better not to kasher than to worry whether you're kashered enough. A Pesach kitchen, if you can afford it, is a very, very big luxury, and it's a very appropriate hidden. In other words, you use a bunch of different pots and pans, you have different kitchen, different sinks. It's a real legitimate hidur to have a Pesach. And then you have the Seder. You come to the Seder. This year you come into the Seder not Vashlafen because Erev Pesach is Shabbos. This is a gift from God. It gives you one less day from Yirav List till Pesach, which is very hard if you're a Lubavitcher. Because Yirav List, you're not thinking about Pesach. Yes, right after Yirav List, they're thinking about selling chametz and cleaning for Pesach. But when Erev Pesach is Shabbos, you lost a day. You're straight from Yirav List into B'dikas chametz. But it's worth it. That Shabbos, eat bread 8 o'clock in the morning, then you flush it down the toilet. And then you sleep, or you learn Chassidus. I don't know what you do, but you're certainly not making charoises and chazeres and mored, and you're certainly not cleaning your house, right? Your wife or your mother or your sister or you can actually get some rest and come to the Seder not completely exhausted, just half exhausted, and be awake by the first Seder also, Imagine Israelis have only one Seder. By the time the women are ready for the Seder, it's gone. Israel has one Seder. It blows my mind. They do it once, Una. And they got to finish before Chatzos. They don't have a chance to say all the different Seder. The kids come from school with all those papers. There's no time to do it. They have one Seder. We have 2. So the first one you do, however you do, the second one you got time. Israel, I think about it every year. They have Rachmanis on us. How can you do it twice? It's so boring the second time. I don't think so. The second time you're actually awake. The first night was a dress rehearsal. But this year, even the Israelis have a good to say to us. There's always geschlafen the Erev Pesach and Shabbos and Achei. You have no choice but to rest. But all these mitzvahs, the matzah, the mother, the charesis, the 4 cups of wine. Everybody's got a headache from something else. One has a headache from the mother, one has a headache from the wine. Everybody has a headache from the matzah. Forget about it. Yeah, but it's mitzvahs. What's the chassidus? What's the chassidus? Every mitzvah has a meaning of Chassidus. Matzah has a meaning of Chassidus. Mother has a meaning of Chassidus. When you learn the Mishnayos, you find out that Charoises is very important. Charoises. Who knows about it? The Mishnah speaks about Charoises, of all things. The Mishnah speaks about Charoises. What's Charoises? It's when you dunk the mother in. Charoises is a ganze Inyan. The Rebbe has a sicha on it. But what is the Chassidus of Pesach? The Chassidus of Pesach is going on Mitzrayim. It's yes Mitzrayim. I'll give you this point from another angle, okay? You were little girls when you learned Chumash. I was a little boy when I learned Chumash. Because you were a little girl when you learned Chumash, because I was a little boy when you learned Chumash, you never really questioned the Chumash critically. Well, when you were little, you didn't question it when you were little, and once you didn't question when you were little, you don't even realize how many questions there are. But I'm going to ask you a really, really dumb question. Hashem wrote a book. Hashem wrote a book. One book. He's not an author, what's the word I'm looking for? Who's very prolific. He wrote one book. It has 5 sections called Chumash, which means 5. Bereshis, Shmois, Vayikra, Bamidbar, Dvarim. And he's telling stories? Really? The Eibush wrote one book. One. Who knows? The 12 Mises. About Dom and Sfadeya and Kinim and Orev and Devid and Shchin and Borod and Arba and Makas and Bechoros. You get the point. The Eibush has nothing better to do with himself than tell such stories. Even the stories of Rav Yitzchak and Yankiv. But the 10 Makas are so important. A whole parsha with Makas. Mamish. When you read the Chumash, if you think about it as an adult, you say, God wrote this? You couldn't find anything more important about than this? Now, you never asked that question. I never asked that question. Because you learned it when you were little, and it was good that this story they're white, because the Chumash started with mitzvahs, you'd fall asleep in 1st grade, not in 3rd grade, you know what I'm saying? The stories you're able to understand. There's a Sodom, there's a Rivka, there's a Rachel, there's a Leah, there's a Billah, there's a Zilpah, there's a Varab, and the brothers are fighting with each other, they sell their brothers. And by the way, you never even stop to ask yourself how the greatest act of cruelty in the whole Chumash is Yosef's brother selling Yosef. You never even think about it. They're terrible people. And the Torah calls them tzaddikim. What kind of tzaddikim are they? You know why you don't ask that question? Because when you learned the Chumash, you were not smart enough to question it. And once you heard it that way, you never questioned it later on. You do once you start learning Sichos. We start learning Sichos. The Rebbe asks the questions for you. But it takes a special clarity to realize that he's asking the question on what you learned in 2nd grade. No, but here's a kasha. Stop talking. Well, you know what? Don't stop talking, but I'll wait for you to finish. Kasha. Why is the Torah telling us these stories? Now, don't misunderstand. I'm not an apokaitis. I'm really not. I'm not. I'm working on it, but I'm not getting it. I'm not smart enough for that. Okay. Why does the Torah tell us these stories? There's a reason. Because these stories are not stories. Every word in the Chumash is recurring. You know the 3 quotable quotes? The first quote is Maise Aves Simin Laban. The second quote is Maise Aves Nesinas Koyach Laban. And the third quote is Torah Miloshen Hira. Every word in the Torah is telling us things that are going to happen to us. That's Simin means. The stories that are written in the Chumash are going to happen again and again and again. And you should know from the Chumash how you should react when they happen again. That's the meaning of that phrase. Maisi Avos Simin Labanim. Number 2, Maisi Avos Koyach Labanim means that all the stories of the Chumash are there. That when you encounter the same hardships again, you have the power to go through them. And then Maisi Avos is Heira Labanim. Every word in the Torah is teaching us something that we must do practically. And Yetzias Mitzrayim is such a great example. I think about people who don't learn Chassidus, and there are few times when I pity them more than when it comes to the Seder. Because they're mamish celebrating going out of Mitzrayim in the year 2448. You've been out of Mitzrayim a long time ago. And that's the halacha. You're supposed to say in the Haggadah, V'isonu ha'yitzim misham. The Gemara says, one of the things if you skip, I don't know what to say, Omer Rabbi Nazariah, if you skip, it doesn't matter, but if you skip this pasuk, you're not able to say that. Every one of us says at the end of the Haggadah, but in the Lefichach, I was taken out of Mitzrayim. There's a chiyuv for us to make it Mitzrayim personal. But some people think that the personal Yetzias Mitzrayim is the Yetzias Mitzrayim that happened 3,000 years ago. But that's not Pesach. It's not Pesach. Pesach is we're all stuck. We're all stuck. And we have a Hebrew word for this stuckness. The Hebrew word for this stuckness is the word Mitzrayim. And the idea of the Pesach Seder is to unstick ourselves. That's what it is. The idea of Yetzias Mitzrayim is to take ourselves out of our own limitations. The Chumash is telling us the story of being slaves in Egypt, going out of Egypt, and the 10 Makkos, not because it happened, but because it's happening. It's the story of people. It's the story of the Jews. It's our history. And every word in the Torah has a timeless value. And that's what Chassidus is doing. What, Chavez, stop doing your secretarial work. Close your books and listen to me. Stop fixing your papers. You're taking notes, Yashikoya. If you're doodling, I'll try to forgive you. But if you're fixing your papers, don't do it here, please. Or at least sit in a place where I can't see that you're doing your secretarial work on my time. You hide behind somebody. I'm saying you sit in front of me and do it. That's disrespectful. If I don't know that you're doing it, then I'm not getting insulted. I'm not wearing my glasses. If I could see they're doing secretarial work, you're really, really being not nice about it. You know what I'm saying? There's the crumpling of the papers, and it's pushed in front of my nose. Click, click, open the loose sleeves, close the loose sleeves of Achei. Chassidus takes everything and makes it now. That's what Chassidus is doing. The Maimorim seems so lofty, so the message of the Maimorim sometimes gets lost because we're trying. That's what the mile of the Sichos, as that young lady said. The Rebbe's Sichos are written in such a way that you can't miss the point. The Maimorim are saying the same thing that Sichos are saying. But sometimes they say them in such holy words that you don't realize what the Maimon is saying. What the Middle Rebbe does in Shad Amunah, what the Alter Rebbe does in his Maimorim. Every Yom Tov that we celebrate is not about what happened; it's about what's happening. And there's a whole process of different Yom Tovim, and each Yom Tov has a different theme, has a different message, has a different idea. And Atzad Hashavah Shabakulam, they're constant in all those themes. And in all those messages, and all those ideas, that it's real now. It's happening now. And I want you to know, one of the most important aspects of the now is you go out of Mitzrayim, and you're still in Mitzrayim. You go out of Mitzrayim, and you're still in Mitzrayim. You go out of Mitzrayim, and you're still in Mitzrayim. Until Mashiach comes. It's enough to drive you nuts. But that's Pesach. Pesach starts the first day is Yetzias Mitzrayim. The last day is Mashiach. And what the Maimorim are constantly saying is, until you get to Mashiach, you're in the process. I had a student who used to say in my classes, I'm in the midst. I'm in the midst. I'm in the middle. Yetzias Mitzrayim, first of all, it's a real thing. And second of all, it never finishes. You know the Tanya? Chapter 31? Yeah, where does it say? Very good. Yashe Koyach, that's good. That the Yid run away from Mitzrayim. Chapter 31 in Tanya, Perek Lamed Aleph. So the Alter Rebbe asks, they're running away from Mitzrayim. Pari kicked them out. He threw them out of Mitzrayim. He just go, just leave, because I don't want to die. So why are the Yid running away? So the Alter Rebbe brings this question in Tanya. He gives a simple answer. They were not running away from Pad, they were running away from themselves. Because the Yid knew they're not ready for Yetzias Mitzrayim. They're ready for Geula. And in 5 minutes from now, they're going to want to stay in Mitzrayim. And this is a very, very important part of the whole theme of Pesach. Chassidus takes Pesach and makes it not into a story, but into a challenge. The challenge is each one of us is stuck. In all kinds of ways. Mitzrayim means a narrowness. I am stuck. I'm stuck in so many ways I can't even tell you. Now, I don't know you, but I'm assuming, you're not as old as I am, so you haven't had as much opportunity to get your pants caught on glue. But you're also stuck. We're all stuck. We're stuck. There are things that we can't do. And we could. We just can't, right? If I could do it, why can't I do it? Because I'm stuck. It's a horror, it's shame, it's inhibition, it's 1,000 labels and names, but they're all Mitzrayim. And we have a Yom Tov that we celebrate every year, that the point of this Yom Tov is to unstick ourselves. That's the chap. The Pesach Seder is not about cleaning the house and eating matzah. It is about cleaning the house. It is about eating matzah. It is about getting a nap this year at a Pesach because of the Shabbos, so you can come to the Seder and be awake. But it's about Exodus. It's about going out of our limitations. That's all the Machon are doing. That's all Chassidus is doing. It's taking a story, a historic event, which has become a whole bunch of mitzvahs. Right? Pesach has like 7 mitzvahs according to the Alter Rebbe, yeah, and making it current, making it real. And like I said before, one of the most interesting parts of the story is that you go out of Mitzrayim and you're still in Mitzrayim. You go out of until Mashiach comes. And that whole idea of going out of Mitzrayim and then still needing to go out of Mitzrayim is so realistic. It's so our life. It's so what we deal with. And that's how we're supposed to come to the Seder. You're supposed to come to the Seder after learning Chassidus. You're supposed to come to the Seder after learning Sichos. You're supposed to come to the Seder with a mindset that this is not only a nice event where you eat food, whatever it is, or you make a public Seder and you feed people and you're done by 10 o'clock and then at 1 o'clock in the morning you start your own Seder, or whatever your particular shlichus approach is. There is a Yevitiyas Mitzrayim to go out of limitations. And there is the challenge of going out of limitations with the understanding that I'm not over. The fight goes on until Mashiach. It's a fascinating duality, you know. So the Maimorim of Chassidus, of Pesach, talk to you about going out of Mitzrayim. They talk to you about even after you went out of Mitzrayim, you're still in Mitzrayim. And they also talk to you about Mashiach. One day we're going to win for real. We're going to win in a final way. And this is the spirit of Pesach. This is the spirit of Pesach. Out of our limitations. And there are 1,000 examples for them. Now here's the facts of life. Okay? The facts of life are as follows. One of the most difficult things in the world is to take our spiritual selves seriously. We take our health seriously. At your age, you don't yet take your health seriously because you think you're going to live forever, okay? The one thing everybody takes very, very seriously is money. When it comes to money, God is dead. When it comes to Geld, everybody becomes funny. I've seen it 1,000 times. All I got to do is look in the mirror. We take money very seriously. The money that I have, the money that I spend, the money that I lost, the money that I did this, whatever it is. But the Eibshter, my ruchnius really, my ruchnius, it's hard to take our ruchnius to get seriously. Why? Because the matter what we do is good anyway. Or to say it as you would like to say it, the matter what we're going to do is going to be bad anyway. But that's not the reason we don't do it. It's because it's okay. It's not that, how terrible is it, How bad is it? You know the story with the Rebbe? This is really it's a shrek l'chamaisa. It's an awesome story. It really, and in this case, the word awesome is precise. It's not borrowed. Zalman Posner, Allah Vashalom, Rabbi Zalman Posner, was one of the great minds and public speakers in English in Lubavitch. He was a very smart man. He was a smart man in ways of the world also. He's a big chacham. He served the Rebbe his whole life. He was a shliach, and the Rebbe had a very special relationship with him. I read in his interviews that every yechidus that he had, the Rebbe used to bring up. The Rebbe used to bring up questions of science and religion. The Rebbe wanted to discuss questions of science and religion, and he needed somebody who could understand, who understood the sciences, and was a religious person. And the Rebbe used to talk to Zalman Posner about science and religion. And he says in his interview that sometimes Pasha didn't understand what the Rebbe was saying, but the Rebbe would talk to him. And Chadakov would scream at Rabbi Posner, how come the Rebbe is spending so much time in the Rebbe's room? So Rabbi Posner would say, listen, Rabbi Chadakov, I need 60 seconds. After that, you can take it up with the Rebbe. Because the Rebbe used to raise topics with him. The Rebbe wanted to share with him. The Rebbe had a lot of ideas that he wanted to share, and he would share them with Rabbi Posner. And I asked his children, so where is all this stuff? And they told me it's in his books, and it said they have notes that they have to organize. But the Rebbe used to bring up questions of science and religion with Rabbi Posner. Anyway, Rabbi Posner used to come to every Pegisha. Pegisha, you don't even know what Pegishas are anymore, because now in every university in America there's a shliach. But 60 years ago there wasn't a shliach on any university campuses, so they used to bring people to Crown Heights. They would go to the universities, they'd make Shabbatons, using the Hillel houses, whatever it was, and they would bring people to Crown Heights. It's one of the many. When I was a kid growing up, the Pegishas were a big deal. They happened a few times a year. We all hosted these men and women who came to Crown Heights. And they would have a whole Shabbos. They would even meet the Rebbe. And there were different speakers. So all the famous speakers of Lubavitch were here during the Old Shabbos. Professor Yitzchak Haneke would come in, Rabbi Zalman Posner, Rabbi Manis Friedman, and Shmuel Lu would always come to the Begishas. They were the same speakers. Professor Black would come from Canada. And these were the big brains of Lubavitch, and some of them were academics, they were smart, they were educated, and they would speak to the people. And Zalman Posner was one of the personalities. He came to every Begisha. So there was once an opportunity during a Pagisha that they should do a radio show. There was a guy in New York who was actually Jewish. His name was Barry Farber. He was a Southerner. Unfortunately, he was married 3 times, each time to a Nishka Yid. He came from the South. He had a very heavy Southern accent, but he had a Yiddish neshama. He had a radio show. He's from the early talk radios, before talk radio was even popular. I remember Barry Farber as a child, as a kid. And he did an interview, I think, with Zalman Posner and Velvel Green. Velvel Green was a professor of biology, a very smart guy, Lubavitcher, Balchova. And he also came to the Pagishas in those early years. And Barry Farber gave them a half an hour to talk about the Pagisha and about Lubavitch and Yiddishkeit and so on. But Barry Farber prepared himself. So when they came to the interview, so of course they were able to announce what Lubavitch was doing and to encourage people to join. But he also asked them some tough questions. And one of the questions he asked them was, a guy puts a light on Shabbos and you stone him? Really? Flip a switch, you throw stones at him and kill him? That doesn't add up to me. He asked them questions about the Daled Mises Bezin, about the biblical law, yeah? Now what's the truth of the matter? Even in Zman Bayesheni, they didn't put people to death. At the end of Bayesheni, when they stopped using Daled Mises Bezin. Daled Mises Bezin hasn't been done for thousands of years, but he picked on it. So Rabbi Posner of Lichting Gan Eden answered the question very rationally. The answer that he gave was that in order for a person to be executed for doing an Aveda, Dinyat Torah, you have to have Eidim Vasra, you have to have witnesses. There's no hearsay, there's no circumstantial evidence, you have to have 2 witnesses who see him do the act physically. And he has to be warned. But he has to be warned within 3 seconds of doing the act. Which means capital punishment in Torah almost never happened. You have to warn the guy literally within 2 or 3 seconds of the action that is not that he shouldn't do this, but if he does this, he's going to be put to death. So he went on explaining to this Barry Farber guy that the reality of the Daled Mises Bezdin was so remote. I mean, a person who wanted to die, this was a method of suicide, you know what I'm saying? It was impossible for a person to get Inside Chassidus because of the rules that were around the Inside Chassidus. What Zalman Posner did not know was that the Lubavitch Rebbe Shlita tuned into the whole interview, listened to the beginning to the end. He listened to the ganze Geschäft. This was the late 60s. It was a little while after Neil Armstrong landed on the moon, which is like June or July 1969. The next Shabbat by Fabring and the Rebbe spoke about it. And when Zalman tells the story, he quells. The Rebbe listened to my interview and then he commented about it. But the Rebbe criticized him. And the criticism of the Rebbe shows the difference between how a person thinks and how a Rebbe thinks. So by the Fabrengen, the Rebbe said that he was asked in an interview about Inside Torah, the punishments of Torah for this, and what's the big deal? I put on a light, I turned an engine on in a car, I threw a piece of wood into a fire. I mean, why is it such a big deal? For this you get stoned. So the Rebbe said, this is what Rabbi Posner should have said. You listening? He should have said the following. They just sent a rocket to the moon and brought people back safely to the earth. So how many different machines did they have? They had to have the rockets that allowed them to leave the gravity of the earth, which is very, very strong, to be very powerful, enormous amounts of energy. And then they had to travel through space. Then they had to have a lunar lander. You know what a lunar lander means? A separate, basically a helicopter that's actually going to land on the moon. And then this helicopter that lands on the moon also has to take them back to the lunar module, to the part of the rocket system that floated around. When they went to the moon, there were 3 guys. 2 would land on the moon, and the other guy would stay in outer space in the other part of the rocket, which is going back to Earth with. So you had to be able to, the lunar lander had to land. Then it had to take off and reattach itself very precisely to the lunar module. And once the astronauts went out of the lunar lander into the lunar module, they took out the rocks that they collected. They would throw it back down to the surface of the moon and it would explode. And they would do tests by blowing it up on the moon itself. Then they come back to the Earth. When they get back to the Earth, they needed to land. And they're crashing into the atmosphere at 5,000 miles an hour. The technology to go into outer space and come back is mind-blowing. It's amazing because so many things can go wrong. And the Rebbe by Fabrengen, he didn't say everything I just said, but he talked through how many parts, how many little pieces there were in that composite, right? Leaving the Earth, traversing 250,000 miles of space, going into orbit around the moon, sending a manned craft to the surface of the moon, leaving the surface, going back to the lunar module, then coming back another 250,000 miles to the Earth, and then landing in the ocean through those parachutes. I'm sure you've seen the film. The Rebbe said it involved millions of parts, millions of screws and tiles, and it's unashir, yeah? If one is missing. To quote the great Barry Farber, what's the big deal? What's the big deal? Now the Rebbe is very edel, so he didn't want to talk about blowing up and people dying. He said it could sabotage the whole mission. So when somebody asks a Yid, he puts on a light on Shabbos, and he gets death, the correct answer is, what's the big deal if you go to the moon missing one tile or one screw? What's the big deal? What's the tenets? What's the big deal? Everyone knows exactly what the big deal is. If you go to the moon and there's missing a screw, a shreifele, a screw, a bolt, a washer, it could be loss of life, kipshute. The Eibishter gave us mitzvahs, and you miss a mitzvah and you don't understand what's the big deal. This is what the Rebbe said that Zalman Posner should have said. Now, Chevra, I want you to be mizboinen in this story. I need to be mizboinen in this story. How seriously do we take the Lubavitcher Rebbe? I mean, anybody messes with the Rebbe will kill him, right? How about when we mess with the Lubavitcher Rebbe? That's another story. It's hard. It's very... Because the Rebbe is making a point that on the one hand it's so simple, on the other hand it's impossible. But the Rebbe is saying, any time any Yid does the smallest thing wrong, it's like missing a screw in a rocket that's going to the moon. That's an awful lot of pressure. Huh? And then we're going to scream that we're going to become neurotic and psychotic and we're going to plots. So you got to take it back. They go to therapy. The therapist says, no, don't take mitzvah seriously. It's like a therapist says, don't take the rocket seriously. What's the difference? This you see and this you don't see, but it's the same. In fact, it's worse. You hear what's going on. The Rebbe's point of view, I want to wait for you to finish talking. I don't know why today you guys are so disinterested in what I'm saying. Maybe because it's boring. But you got to do it quietly. You could sleep or listen. Those are your options. You can't schmooze. Go ahead.
We're expected to do everything perfect?
Yeah. Well, no, you don't have to do everything perfect, but just envisage the rocket. Just envisage the rocket. The Rebbe, no, you see, here's the problem. It's not the Rebbe doesn't perfect. The Rebbe can't understand that we don't understand that we must do everything perfect. His problem is not that he wants us to be perfect. He says he doesn't understand how we don't understand how serious it is. It's beyond that. The Rebbe is a lukus. The Rebbe is a tzaddik. And he's saying missing a mitzvah is like missing a screw in a rocket. It's really, really a lot. But the Rebbe said that's what Zalman Posner should have told Barry Farber on the radio. That's a nishka from a Yid. The whole audience is goyim, or a lot of the audience is goyim. And what's the answer? If the Eibishter gave a mitzvah and you didn't listen, it's like going to the moon minus a tile. I remember the what do they call those things? The shuttles blowing up. The what do they call it? The space shuttles blew up. One when it left the atmosphere, and one when it returned to the atmosphere, because it was missing a tile that was this big. One tile. And it tore the shuttle to shreds and killed everything inside. Because when you are crashing into the atmosphere at 5,000 miles an hour, the heat is hot as the sun. And if you don't have the heat shield, one tile fell off when they left the atmosphere, so they surround the shuttle with foam. If you ever see the videos, they surround the shuttle with foam. The foam is foam, it's styrofoam. and it hit the shuttle, and it snapped off one tile, tiny little thing. Who saw it? And on re-entry, it tore the thing to pieces. So the Rebbe is saying that's how serious missing a mitzvah is. It's awesome. It's beyond our fathoming. That's the Rebbe's point of view. So I want to get back to my point. My point is that it's hard for us, B'klal, to take. We're Yiddish, we're Chassidish, we're good. If I lose my wallet, I'm ois mensch. But if I missed a mitzvah, okay, I get used to it. Chassidus is coming along, B'klal. And before Pesach particularly, it says this is a time for going out of limitations. Not limitations that you should learn how to eat more or exercise longer. Limitations that limit the involvement that you have with the Eibishter. And that's Yitzias Mitzrayim. The Yom Tif of Pesach is not a has-been. The Yom Tif of Pesach is not a story for little kids who have crowns on their heads and they're so excited to show up to the Seder, and all the teenagers are bored out of their minds. Unfortunately, that's not the Yom Tov of Pesach. The little kids have their crowns and their little books, and the teenagers are struggling with Yitzias Mitzrayim Beruchnius. That's how it's supposed to be. And the adults and the parents and the grandparents are struggling with Yitzias Mitzrayim Beruchnius. Pashik Pshute. What Yitzias Mitzrayim Beruchnius? I got problems in Avodas Hashem. Now, Tishrei, we do Tshuva. Pesach, we redeem ourselves. We transcend. Pesach is a time for Yitzias Mitzrayim to go out of limitations. So I started saying that number one, it's hard for us, B'klal, to take Aruch Nizdik alive seriously. We all think, it's okay. Which is a big mistake. It's not true, but that's how we feel often. And the second thing is, you don't go out of Mitzrayim in grand sweeps. Nobody does. If a person wants to go out of limitation, he takes it one baby step at a time. In other words, today is Chov Dalid Oder. That means the Seder is in 20 days. Mamish. Achei Temimim. What's the Shabbos? The Sunday. The Seder is in 20 days. Over the course of these 20 days, we have to ask ourselves, I got 4,742,911 Mitzrayims. It's probably an understatement, yeah? Which one am I going to exit? I'm going to choose a Mitzrayim in my life, one little one, one cleaning kid. And this year, I'm going to fight this fight and I'm going to win it. I'm ashamed to tell you examples myself because they're so small. But I challenge myself. I do. I challenge myself. I challenge myself to be a little frumer in this little way. And they're tiny. I'm embarrassed to tell you because they're so unimportant. But they're hard for me to do because I have 60 years of bad habits. But you're consistent, you do it, and it becomes a new you, and you take another challenge. Yitzias Mitzrayim, the Pesach Seder is not a story; it's a challenge, and part of the challenge is appreciating this duality. A, I'm going out of a limitation, and B, after I left my limitation, I'm still limited until Mashiach comes. That space is the Seder. That space is the Seder. And I'm not trying to say it to be discouraging. I'm saying it for you to appreciate the reality of it. But this is what Chassidus does to Pesach. It challenges each boy and girl, each man and woman, each Baba and Zayda, to take something which they're stuck by or in, and to transcend it, to exceed the limit in a small way. So you got 20 days to decide which Mitzrayim you're going to pick on. Okay? Want examples of Mitzrayim? I can give you examples. No one's going to get hurt because they're benign. They're parat, yeah? If you're not so careful about davening mincha, if you're not so careful of always saying a bracha achreina, if you're not so careful about saying a bracha rishoina. I did an interview a few days ago with a relative of mine because tonight's her bub is yahrzeit. Her bub is my cousin. So she's posting it today. And she was into benching. Her bubba used to bother her about benching. She should bench. So part of the interview was talking about benching. So I said to her, your grandmother used to make you crazy to bench. Your grandmother was from a different generation. It's because your grandma was trying to teach you a very important lesson in life, which is, if you focus on the little things, you won't have problems with the big things. In this room, there's Kenana Hara Lamas like fit him in the Isaac made like 30 girls, I'm gonna guess, 35 girls, I don't know the exact number, yeah? On an average day, how often does it happen that you drink a little water and don't make a bracha? You eat a candy, don't make a bracha. You put a piece of bubble gum in your mouth and don't make a bracha. Or even if you make a bracha, but you don't make an after bracha. And it doesn't happen because you don't care. It happens because you're not paying attention. You're not paying attention. Why aren't you paying attention? Because you're not in the habit of paying attention. I have another problem. I inherited the disease from my mother. I make 3 or 4 brachas achin on every piece of food that I eat, which is also, I bench. Again, I'm always asking people that I bench. It's an inherited disease. It's a good disease to have, but it's still a disease. I can literally make a ber nefasha 3 times in the same apple. And then I have to say Baruch Shem. After how many Baruch Shem do I have to say, If I too many Baruch Shem, I have a problem, This I got from my mother, so it's not looking stark. Okay, but I'm lucky. I'm very lucky. Because a lot of people don't have such mothers that, did I bench? And she goes, no, did I bench? And Ma, you bench. Don't worry, you bench. Yeah. So we all inherited benching 3 or 4 times. But the opposite, you put food in your mouth. I'm not sure which is a bigger issue. For some people, a friend girls don't do this like boys do, but a guy has a bag of chips, as he's walking down the hall, everybody takes one, pops it in his mouth. Who makes a bepi adom? It's one chip. You're supposed to make a bracha. Now you can't make a bracha achrena. It's a little thing. It's so little. That's the whole point. When we pay attention to the little things, we won't have to deal with the big things. I told this lady who did the interview with me, you have to stop talking. You're making me really nervous.
Can you give an example of a big thing? How is that?
Say that again.
Can you explain that?
That if you do little things or the big things, I'm telling you a story. New York City had 2 successive mayors, one and then the other. The first mayor's name was Dinkins. Dinkins was an African American. He was black. So his constituents, the ones who voted for him, were the African American. So when he campaigned, when he was running, he said that in New York City, the black youth are charged for much more crimes than anybody else. Why? Because they're the ones on the street corner standing and selling the drugs. And by the way, those kids on the street corner selling and selling drugs, if they make chas v'shalom one mistake, they get punched shot in the head. It's pekuach nefesh. They're risking their lives to sell $5 worth of drugs. He said, I'm not going to go after the kid on the street. I'm going to go after the white man who's giving the Schwarzer kids the drugs, and he's making millions of dollars, and he's hiding in his Cadillac with his tinted windows. I'm going after him. This is what he campaigned. It was an interesting idea. What ended up happening was he became the mayor, and it became dangerous to walk the streets of Crown Heights, of New York. The riots in Crown Heights got under him. Why? Because he didn't prosecute the kids on the street. Taka went after the big guys. I don't know how much he caught them. But on the street, there was violent crime that wasn't being stopped. He lasted 1 term, and he lost his next election because New York really spun out. And after him, Julian was an Italian. So he said, I'm definitely going after the kid on the street. And he called it quality of life crimes. You could get arrested for making noise in New York City under Giuliani. The effect of Giuliani is still felt. Giuliani was the mayor 30 years ago. He changed New York City. He really did. The idea of policing and not letting people get out of control, he introduced that. A lot of mayors after him, even from the other party, followed his lead because his ideas worked. He said, I am going to prosecute little crimes. And under Giuliani, New York was so cleaned up that not only there were no little criminals, there were no big criminals. Because if you stop the kid on the street from selling the 5-pack, whatever it is, the drugs for $5, the guy in the Cadillac with the tinted windows can't sell it either. So we saw played out in front of our eyes 2 approaches to problems. Yeah, you're a Lubavitcher girl, you're a Hasidic girl. Now, if you're going on Mivtzoyim, you worry about big things. When you raise a Jewish child, Shabbos is important, Kosher is important, Tznius is important, Tefillin is important, right? But brachas, negavaseh. How important is that? You know what the answer is? If you as a parent do not focus on those little things, the kids are not going to have them at all. And it's going to eat away at the big ones. But if in addition to teaching your children about Shabbos, and about Pesach, and about Kosher, and about Tznius, and about all the rest, you make a big deal out of the little mitzvahs, those little mitzvahs become a buffer, they become a shmira against the big things. And this is a place where each person in this room, in this Pesach, Tov Shin Pei Hey, can go out of Mitzrayim. If you're not careful about making brachas, you're not careful about davening mincha, say from now, take upon yourself to be more from in one little teeny tiny piece in your life. It's a teeny tiny little piece. But that teeny tiny little piece is very, very hard for you because of the bad habit. And when you overcome it, you become a stronger person. That's like Yetzias Mitzrayim. And then you can overcome another test and another test. This is Pesach, girls. Otherwise,